Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks, TYT Politics. I'm here with Melissa Mays, leading activist and resident in Flint. We've spoken many times. So, a lot of activity happening there right now. Now, for people unfamiliar, there was I'd say a couple weeks ago, about 8,000 residents were facing tax liens on their home for not paying their water bill. This isn't your average, utility not getting paid. Many of them weren't paying because, on principle, they're not going to pay for poisoned water, and for various other reasons. It's still not safe to drink the water, as I've reported, and as you've been, advocating for in the state and federally for years. So, essentially, in Flint and in Michigan, you're still under this emergency manager rule, even without an emergency manager. There's a thing called the Receivership Transition Advisory Board, which is essentially 4 or 5 businessmen that Governor Rick Snyder appointed to be his proxy, essentially.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened at the city council meeting and then at the RTAB meeting.
Well, in May, City Council had voted to put a moratorium on the tax liens, basically saying for a year this is not going to happen. People are not going to lose their homes due to this bad water, and they would revisit it in a year and see how the water quality is and see where everybody's at. And this was great because we had no warning that this was coming. So we just received a letter in the mail saying, hey, your bill is $2,057. You have to pay $891 in the next couple of weeks, or that's it. You're going to have a tax lien placed on your home.
And you received one of those letters.
I did. Yes, it was not awesome because we're already dealing with the fact that our house is falling apart and our appliances and our plumbing, we have to replace out of our own pockets, and nobody is helping with any of that. And we only use our water to flush our toilets and unfortunately shower as quickly as we possibly can. So why our water bills are that high, that's another reason that we're fighting. There's a senior citizen that her bill was $200 a month. She paid it every month. All of a sudden, bam, last month her bill was $8,000. So there's a billing problem. There's something going on. So not only should we not pay for poison that's harming us in our homes, these bills aren't right. They are not right, and they're not fixing it. So we have several different reasons to push. Also, in a city that's 41% at or below the poverty line, we pay the highest rates in the United States, 8 times the national average for water we can't use safely. So all of that wrapped in, City Council had voted, and our mayor supported a moratorium. The RTAB, the Receivership Transition Advisory Board, was supposed to vote because, again, our local officials can vote all day long, but the state still runs our city. And so while we have to deal with that, we figured, okay, well, this is the right thing to do. Why would you further punish the poisoned residents? And we kind of just assumed that RTAB was going to go with it because it had full support from the mayor and city council. Well, the state, in the middle of all this, has decided to send letters threatening the city council with legal actions and different ridiculous threats that are just above and beyond if they didn't sign on to this 30-year contract with Great Lakes Water Authority, which is Detroit. Now, everybody wants to stay with Detroit. Nobody wants to go to the KWA. We don't want to suffer through another water switch. But the 30-year contract has a lot of questions. Basically, Great Lakes Water Authority would be buying our Carigandi Water Authority credits. And the KWA, of course, is the pipeline that's towards privatization, and one of the whole reasons that we got poisoned in the first place was to switch to prepare for this pipeline that we didn't vote on and didn't want, but had to pay for. So the mayor worked with Detroit to try to get us out of this Carigandi Water Authority contract. And because we don't even have ownership of that, it's a huge mess. We'd have to use our completely outdated water treatment plant. So everybody's on the same page that staying with Detroit right now is what's best. But 30 years is a long time to make a decision, especially since our trust is gone. And out of nowhere, the state starts pushing this deal, even though they fought so hard. We fought since the beginning of 2015 to go back to Detroit, and they wouldn't let us. They told us, no, it's too expensive, did everything they could to stop us from going back to Detroit. And so now here we are, we're getting ready to sign on to go back, to stay with Detroit, because we've been on Detroit Water now since October of 2015. And again, things aren't getting that much better, but it's way better than the alternative, which is the KWA. And so now the state out of nowhere is pushing this deal. And there's so many questions that we don't have. City Council had to actually submit a Freedom of Information Act to even get the deal that they're supposed to vote on. So that's insane to me. And the mayor even said that there's questions, but her thing is like it's best for the health of the residents to not switch the water again. And the public health officer agreed. But there's just questions with this, signing of our souls away that we still have and we're not getting answers to. And so the city council actually delayed the vote because they wanted to get the information, and the state sent them 2 threatening letters, and one of which drug our settlement into it, which is completely absurd.
Slow down, because people might not know. So what she's talking about now, Detroit's water and sewage, Flint used Detroit water and sewage for 40, 50 years, and then they switched to the Flint River. We know what happened. And separately from what is the future water source, you and the concerned pastors and some other folks were plaintiffs against the state in a lawsuit, and a federal judge granted you guys $97 million, correct?
Yes. Basically, it's a Safe Drinking Water Act case, so it forced the city and state to come into compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act and the lead and copper rule, meaning because we had been out of compliance for so long with lead that they had to start replacing all of the lead and galvanized service lines. Now, the mayor had already started this, but there was no guarantee past 2,000 lines, and we have an estimated 18 to 20,000 lead or galvanized service lines. So we went to court and forced them to come into compliance, and so now the state has to pay the $87 million plus a cushion of $10 million to replace every single lead and galvanized service line. Again, it's a small piece. It's not everything. It's not money damages. It's just getting some of these things rolling to fix it, because we still need the mains and piping inside of our home replaced because it's all contaminated. So inside of this settlement agreement is an enforcement to keep the EPA emergency order. Now, the EPA came out in January of 2016 and said the city and state could not switch the water again without 6 months of testing, proper personnel running the water treatment plant, and all of these other safety precautions, which are pretty much common sense. You just cannot, irresponsibly switch the water again like they did before. So our fear with looking at this current administration is that the EPA is going to be dismantled. So we would have no one to keep the state in check if they wanted to switch our water again last minute without doing the proper research and, safety precautions first. So in the settlement, we said that even if the EPA gets completely torn apart, that the city and state must still abide by the safety guidelines inside of that settlement, inside of that EPA order. Common sense. Just don't switch the water without doing research first and without having the proper equipment and personnel. Common sense. So the state decided to say Friday that because they had put this deadline, the state put a deadline of June 26th for the city council to make this decision and sign off, that they were going to be in violation of this EPA order, thereby being in violation of the settlement. And it blows my mind because we're staying with Detroit. We're not switching the water. So then we had people completely going insane saying that, the settlement is going to force us to go to this 30-year contract. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with it. It's 2 separate things. So it shows to me personally that the state is desperate because they had already sent a letter June 15th threatening legal action, which what kind of legal action? And then they sent the letter on Friday, the 23rd. And I thought it was interesting. I just had a few questions. I said, well, how can the state violate the city in the EPA order? Isn't that the EPA's job? And also, how can they violate the city in the settlement? I said, I just asked the questions. I said, isn't that the federal judge's job? So I find it interesting that they're using this. And then in all the language of the letter they sent Friday, it was 2 pages. And after all the threats on page 1, the second page says, we're looking forward to a phone conference in 14 days. So that's the extent of that, because they're still trying to push it. So city council on Monday, this past Monday, was talking about the letter. They were scared. They didn't want to be sued. Nobody wants to be sued. And then, so the attorneys were like, wait, hold on. No, let's look at this. These are 2 separate issues. And of course, no one from the state was answering their questions about these letters. So here we are, the state's telling us to do something and we have no choice. And that doesn't sit well with the Flint residents because that's how we got poisoned in the first place. And so they said, well, let's offer a couple of alternatives. And they were great. A couple of the city council people, Winfrey and Galloway, actually put forth like alternatives, still staying on Detroit, but talking about, different things with the contract. Things like let's put in some health protective measures inside of this, because in case we get poisoned again, we need the freedom to pull off of that. And why that's so important is that March of 2015, I asked Jeff Wright, who is the Genesee County Drain Commissioner and the CEO of the Carigani Water Authority, this pipeline we didn't want. I asked him, I said, what if your experiment fails? Because they didn't even have a treatment plant built, and we don't even get a new treatment plant for this whole new pipeline. And I said, what if your experiment fails and people get poisoned like they are in Flint? And I said, can they get out of it? Can these cities get out of this KWA contract? And he said, no, a contract is a contract. So that's terrifying, because here we were stuck on the Flint River, couldn't get off. So we want to have some kind of say in our own future. Plus, we want to have a seat on the board, on the Great Lakes Water Authority board. It's ridiculous that we wouldn't, because we're the largest customer. So the things that we're asking for and that City Council's asking for are not outrageous. And of course, it's still staying. It's not a water switch. So these threats, these threats are ridiculous. So we're like, okay, well, they can threaten all day long. We're going to be fine. We're going to demand these answers, and we're going to make sure the best deal is made for the residents to keep their health and safety and, and keep the costs down, because again, still paying the highest rates in the United States. Our rates here in Flint by the emergency manager and the former mayor were illegally raised multiple times. And Food and Water Watch had proven that the city of Flint back in 2014 and 15 were raising our rates from the Detroit cost to what we get charged in Flint 1,000%. And remember, they had told us that Detroit was, basically robbing us and all this stuff. No, the rate difference was 1,000% increase. So it was the emergency manager and former mayor that did that. And it just piled up, 85% increases here, there, all this stuff, illegally raised rates. So we're still dealing with that, because that has not been rectified. So the next day, yesterday, our tab goes in to vote on the moratorium on the tax liens. No big deal, fine. Wrong. They said since City Council didn't vote, that they're going to go ahead and deny their vote on the moratorium. So since City Council didn't sign on to what the state wanted with this deal, then they're going to go ahead and go ahead and reinstate the tax liens going back to July of 2014. So people are going to start losing their homes. We're in shock. We're like, you're punishing City Council for not making a vote about staying with this contract. But you're punishing 8,002 residents. You're going to take their homes. You've got to be kidding me.
It's like what they do in Washington, D.C. A bill is about X, and they add all these other things to try to ram through their goodies. They call it poison pills in legislation. That's what they're doing here.
Absolutely, and that's a fitting term, because here we are, we're just sitting here, we're like, wait a second, one has nothing to do with the other, because the thing is they're saying, well, the city of Flint needs extra money now because the council didn't sign on, and it's going to cost an extra amount every month, and blah, blah, blah. First of all, we know that there's plenty of money in the water and sewer fund, because people are paying their water bills because they're scared of losing their homes, their children, all the bad things. They don't want to be shut off. It's in the middle of the summer. There's all of these issues, so people are paying. And they're saying, well, we need the money to make the water upgrades. See, we got that money that's coming from Congress when it eventually leaves the state's hands, but also the lawsuit money that we just got. So, no, you can't be sitting here saying that you need all this extra money for water infrastructure upgrades when you have, 87 to 97 million coming from the state, plus, another 40 million or whatever's left after the state grabs onto it to replace the mains. It's not enough. It's not. We do need more, but the city's not going to go broke because of this. And they're saying it's going to cost, the moratorium is going to cost so much money. Wrong. It's not going to hurt the city because it's illegal to run the city off of the water fund. Right. That's what gets us into this problem in the first place. So every argument Sabuda had, which is the chief financial officer, totally supported the state, totally supported the RTAB, and they said, well, that's just the way that it is. And here's the thing. Once these homes, in July, coming up, when these tax liens go to the county, they get attached to the property taxes. The property tax money does not go to the city. It goes to the county. So the fact that they're saying, well, we need money, so we're going to go ahead and put these tax liens out there, wrong. That's not going to benefit the city at all. What that's going to do is it's going to remove 8,002 taxpayers from the city. It's going to shrink the city down, which of course is the goal. So so the fact that they're saying that it's going to help the city by putting this moratorium in is absolutely incorrect.
Well, this is the same CFO, David Sabuda, who told me that putting tax liens on poisoned residents is just normal. It's like normal, like any other citizen would do. If you remember that. So,
yeah. Even though other states don't do this, and people were completely appalled that you're not paying a utility so they can take your house. It's insane. It's an outdated ordinance, and the city, we want to change it. We've been working on rewriting the ordinance, which takes time, of course, and they just said it's fine. And Sabuda said, oh, the water bills are manageable. Really? You can pay an $8,000 water bill, buddy? All right.